Hey everybody, I'm Tom Bassel. Welcome to Week in Review. I should point out that this is the last video you're going to see on our channel for a while because this week we're taking the week off. We're not actually taking the week off. We're taking some of the week off because it's Thanksgiving here in America. So we're definitely taking off at the end of the week. But we need to get our new studio finished up. So we're spending the beginning of the week wiring it up for lighting, wiring it up for audio, and just getting that studio ready to go. Okay, but we're here to talk in this video about the videos we did last week, giving you a short summary of them, and then if you want to see the full video, it's in links in the description below. So let's get started.
Hey everybody, I'm Z Garcia. Here's what I did last week. So I reviewed Sapa Inka, which I rated a 6 out of 10. This is a little resource management game with a neat worker selection idea in which if you take something from in front of someone else, they get a little something even on your turn. But that's about the only spark of interest in the game. Everything else is really by the numbers, and the game I thought was missing a little more oomph. It was missing moments of discovery, moments of elation. There is at no point a moment in this game where I can turn to someone else and say, you know what, that was a good turn. It just doesn't happen. It sort of bumbles along pleasantly enough, and then somebody wins. I reviewed Meadow Downstream, which is an expansion to Meadow. I rate that an 8 out of 10. It's a lovely, gorgeous expansion that really folds in nicely to the game. It's not one I would necessarily teach to a new gamer with the expansion folded in. It's not one I consider to be something you must get if you got the original game. It fixes nothing. But what it does bring to the table, it institutes into it and folds in lovingly and very well. It gives you new things to worry about that you can choose to do or not do. Your score will not suffer from that. And I really like the theme, this idea of taking your kayak down the stream and getting bonuses along the way. It's lovely. I reviewed Verdant, which I gave an 8 out of 10 to. This one is a little abstracted, but the idea of sort of creating a tessellation between rooms and plans, and those things scoring off of one another is a clever idea. It gives you some nice puzzling moments without being too punishing, without ever getting to a point where you feel like taking any card will completely destroy your game plan. Now, it does get a little flatter the last couple of rounds, where you're really just sort of plugging in the last couple holes, and it's unlikely at that point you'll have a fantastic play where you go, ha-ha, the one thing I've been waiting for the whole game. But that's very, very close to the end of the game, and the rest of it I do enjoy. I think this is a beautiful, engaging game with the right amount of puzzle solving and not a punishing feel. And then lastly, I reviewed Laniakea, which I also rated an 8 out of 10. This is an abstract two-player game with a really cool twist in which you're trying to get your pieces across to the other side. The opponent is doing the same to you, but the center moves around as you take one of these sort of domino-shaped tiles, you push it into a lane, and a domino falls out of the other one, with you changing the configuration of where your playing pieces may stop. You have to puzzle all of this out as you move your pieces across the board. You can jump on top of a stack up to 3 high, and then everything below your piece is locked for now. But when you come off of that stack, you have to move a number equal to the stack height. So if you can create a 3, that's fantastic. You can jump 3, but you need to make sure 1, 2, 3 away is clear. And of course, your opponent can try to maneuver it so that you end up with a place you can't go to. It's very different from a lot of abstract games. It's not a quick abstract game. It takes about 40 minutes, so it's a crunchy, thinky one. And I really liked it. I thought it was clever. It was different. It was interesting. So it's one I would very much recommend. Well made, fun, and a little bit, outside of the usual things I tend to see in abstract gaming. So there you go. That's it for me. My name is Z Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.
Hey everyone, Chris here. This week we did quite a few things, including non-reviews like the 12 Games of Christmas, as you can see from the decor here. We did our continuing series of the Disney Sorcerer's Arena competition, in which I crushed Camilla in your face. And I'll be advancing to the final matches. Woohoo! But more importantly, we did some reviews. So, starting off with Mysterium Kids. I gave this one a 5. This is Mysterium, but with a drum. It's a hand drum, to give clues. it has moments of being clever, but also other times it's way too straightforward, and it doesn't have much replayability. Once you've seen the stuff in the deck once, you're pretty much good. So Mysterium Kid's a 5. Wingspan Asia, I gave a 7, which is maybe not like a huge sounding score to you, but for me this is big because I don't like the original Wingspan that much. It's lower than this. And this is one of those times where I think less is more. As a standalone 2-player game, I think this is a really good package. The mix of bird cards in this particular one I think is more fun. It has some fun push your luck aspects to it, some fun mutual beneficial aspects where every player gets a small thing. You get a slightly bigger thing. I think this is just a better package, and I prefer playing Wingspan at 2 players. So Wingspan Asia, a 7 from me. Hot Lead, I give this one a 7.5. A small box Knizia game, simultaneous reveal, collect sets of cards from the middle of the table, and it's just got moments of excitement and silly and goofiness. This is in the Bitewing series of games. We reviewed another one of those, and another one will come up. But I enjoy this one plenty. I thought this was a very fun, raucous, kind of chaotic time. And then lastly, I reviewed Woodcraft, which I gave an 8. Slicing dice and gluing them and splicing them and stuff, all that is great. I think that it's a fun, kind of vibrant setting that this is in. My biggest hang-up is I wish that the contract fulfillment didn't drive which strategic decisions you could explore. If you want to know what that means, of course, go watch the review. But, I mean, still so much fun. Some of the best dice manipulation I've had in the game. So, an 8 out of 10 from me, and that's been my week.
All right, this week I took a look at 4 different games. First up, I looked at Verdant. Verdant, I gave a 6.5. It's really hard not to compare this game to Calico and Cascadia. They're kind of in the same series here. I found this one a little bit too close to Calico in specifically the scoring aspect. I really enjoyed the gameplay, but I found as it went along, I enjoyed it less and less. And then walking away from the scoring was just kind of a mess, just a grueling mess. So 6.5 for Verdant for me. Also took a look at Woodcraft. Now, Woodcraft is a heavier Euro game. I found it just to be too mechanical. I do enjoy the heavy Euro games. I do enjoy a good puzzle in a game, but I find sometimes if the theme is just not really well integrated, it just kind of makes it too much like work. So Woodcraft I also came in at a 6.5 for. Looking up, though, I did take a look at Insecta, the Ladies of Entomology. I really enjoyed the gameplay of this one. I came in at a 7.5 for Insecta. Insecta, I really liked the tableau building. I liked the interesting decisions. I liked the scoring in game as well as end game. I thought that's a great balance of it, and action selections, a lot of good stuff happening in this game. Unfortunately, what held it back for me was a lot of the symbology. I just feel like this kind of needed a graphical design overhaul. It would be much, much higher for me with that. But even despite that and kind of the challenges of that, still really enjoyed the gameplay. Finally looked at an expansion for Meadow, one of my favorite games. Took a look at Meadow Downstream. Meadow Downstream is going to bring in another board and more options where you can go kayaking down a river, kind of have racing elements to it, new animals. It's a lot of new stuff, but stuff that very, very well integrates into the base game. It's not one that I would call essential. I don't think you have to have it, and I might not always play with it, especially with new players, but I always want it available. I love the options that it brings. I think it expands the game by giving you more things you're familiar with, but also little tweaks on them. And I found it to be absolutely wonderful. This is not an essential one, but it's essential for me. It is one I absolutely want, and I always want available to play if it arises. So that's going to be it for me. Let's keep going.
Bonjour mes amis, je m'appelle Jeff et je suis le technicien de table dans le Dice Tower. And since that's all the French I remember from high school, we're going to go ahead and put a pin in that for the rest of this video. Hey folks, this week I took a look at Pierre, which is by R&R Games and designers Louise and Costa. Now this is an interesting action selection game where 1 to 4 players will be harvesting grapes, pressing those grapes into fine champagnes, and then trying to sell those champagnes to various international markets. Those are the thematic elements of the game. There are some, let's say, non-thematic elements where players can collect goal cards, even some set collection cards, and there are also various markets in the game that may or may not be willing to buy your champagne just based on which one of your presses you made it in, which is Let's just go with weird. However, the game is quite good. It reminded me a bit of Carnegie in that the order in which you take your actions, of which you can only take a certain number of times throughout the game, is very pivotal to your success or failure. However, unlike Carnegie, you're always in control of the actions that you take. There's no players choosing an action and everyone kind of having to go along. You always get to pick your action in Pierre. And I'll say that after my first play of it, I didn't really care for it at all. But on my second play, it really started to click, and I really do enjoy this game. In fact, in our last 4-player game, there was only 6 points separating first and last place in a game that exceeded 100 points. So there is definitely a good game here. There's a good bit of strategy to this. There's just some unique on and off thematic elements that may or may not change the way that you perceive the game. Anyways, that is Pierre. Check out my review here in the channel, and a big shout out to my wife to help me out with some of the skits and jokes in this video. If nothing else, you want a good laugh, be sure to check it out here in the channel. Other than that, au revoir. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Wendy Yi, and this week I reviewed 3 games. The first game is Mysterium Kids, Captain Echo's Treasure. I gave this a 5 because I was definitely expecting a more Mysterium-like game with some cool, creepy pictures, maybe some guessing, trying to figure out who killed who. But instead, what it is you have a little drum and you're making sounds on it, trying to get other people to guess what the picture is in front of them. But the pictures are pretty basic. For a kid's game, my daughter enjoyed it a little bit, but it didn't have as much as I was hoping for, and it doesn't have a lot of replay value. The next game is Hot Lead, or Hot Lead. This is a little push your luck betting card game. It's basically the second half of For Sale. And I gave this a 7 because I think that it's got some cool choices and it's extremely quick. So it just feels like a very classic feeling card game. We play it, it takes 15 minutes. We play it again. We play it 3 or 4 times in a session. Like it's enjoyable. There's some good stuff there. The last one I reviewed is Woodcraft. I gave this an 8.5 and I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's some good, gritty, thinky points in Woodcraft. It's got a very cool action selection, and I enjoy the theme of putting wood together and making stuff out of it, trying to fulfill contracts and the such. So it's got some really good stuff if you want a good, crunchy, thinky game that's very tight, but also has some great stuff going on. So that's what I reviewed this week. Thanks so much. I'm Wendy Yi.
Hey there, everybody. It's Mike Delicio, and let's talk about the week that was. First off, we'll start with Sapa Inka. This is a game I gave a 6 out of 10 to. It's a perfectly fine game. It's essentially a card game of resource conversion and management and contract fulfillment. I thought the game was fine, but I felt like it just wasn't dynamic enough. I really felt like I had seen everything there was to see after one game. That's why I came in with a 6. Up next is Spires and Hildegard, which is a 1 to 2 player game, but essentially this is a solo game. It's a choose your own adventure style game where you're doing some dice checks. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10, really close to a across the board recommendation, but there were a couple of things that I felt kept it from that. I think this will work well for certain solo players. If you're okay with a lot of dice rolling and where the story is first and the mechanics are second, then this might be for you. But I couldn't give it an across-the-board recommendation. Really close. Up next is Hot Lead, a card game from Reiner Knizia. I gave this a 7 out of 10. This is a game that is very quick. I mean, it's really a game where you're playing cards that have number values on them, and it's a simultaneous play game where you're trying to win one of 3 cards in a central market. There's a little bit of push your luck because you don't ever want to go above 3 of a set because then you would bust. A clever game. I think you need to be okay with a bit of chaos because there's really no real mitigation you could do with the cards you were dealt, but a fun game. Up next is Verdant. I gave Verdant an 8 out of 10. This is part of a kind of a series of games that have been coming from AEG and Flat Out games. They're kind of puzzle type games, Calico, Cascadia, and now Verdant. And this has some similarities where you are kind of drafting cards and tiles to place into a personal tableau. I felt like this one kind of is in between those 3 games of Calico and Cascadia, where it's not quite as punishing feeling for some people as Calico, not quite as wide open as Cascadia, but I really like the puzzle. Great production as all of these games have been. And finally, the Meadow expansion, Downstream. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. And it's interesting because I don't say it's an essential expansion, and that's because I don't feel like the base game needs an expansion. However, if you want to play something that gives you a little bit more, another thing to think about without changing the core rules and the feel of Meadow, then this is a easy recommendation. Everything that it does, I feel like it does outstandingly well. It does not add a lot of rules complexity. It just opens up your decision making a little bit. All right, well, that's it for me this week. Let's keep it moving.
Okay, for me, let's see, we took a look at Verdant. Verdant is from the same folks who made Cascadia and Calico. It's a game about putting plants in your house. The theme is okay. I just feel like all the points and all the scoring and everything doesn't make it good enough compared to the lightness of the game. It's a kind of a weird mix for me that just didn't land as well as it could have. It's okay, 6 out of 10. And just as an aside, I did 6 games I played so you don't have to. So don't think I'm giving all my games ratings a 6. I gave 6 games 5 or below. You can check out that video for full information on them. I also took a look at Spires and Hildegard, which is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure solo type game. There's a lot of things about it I enjoyed, but I did not particularly care for the combat system, and I felt like the choices I was just kind of randomly picking each time. Insecta, this is a game that's similar to Verdant, where you're putting down the tiles, insects, and ways to score them, but I like this one. It has some graphical problems, but it's a solid game, 7 out of 10. Wingspan Asia, the newest expansion for Wingspan, but also a 2-player game, and also can make your game go up to 6 to 7 players, something I'll never do. But as a 2-player game, it works very well, and the new cards are good and add more. There's a little bit of ways to push your luck, so 7 out of 10. Almanac, The Crystal Peaks. This is a sequel to the first Almanac, I think The Dragon's Road. Anyway, it's the same game, just with different pages. You're going through a book, flipping through the book, placing workers on the pages of that book. A solid game, 8 out of 10. And then Woodcraft. I love this game. It's a dice manipulation game. Dice is wood. You're taking it, you're chopping it, you're gluing it, putting it together, building things out of it. From the same designer who made Underwater Cities. It's just a really solid game. I almost gave it a 9, but 8.5. Also, we continued our Disney Sorcerer's Arena list this week. But our big thing that we did this week, well, 2 things. One, we did a top 10 games that we like, but we had a bad experience at. And then we did the 12 games of Christmas. We did 10 different lists here of games that we recommend that you buy. We're not saying they're the best in these categories. We just think these are very solid games that you should check out and maybe buy for other people this Christmas. Either way, Christmas season is upon us. If you are in America, we hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving this week. We'll see you all around. We're getting ready to go to PAX Unplugged in a couple weeks, so if you're going to that, we'll have fun seeing you there. But for now, we're going to go off air for a bit. We'll see you in a week. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell, and you've been watching Week in Review on the Dice Tower.